institution. My name is Kendall Farrell. I am the Media Relations and Strategic Programming Manager here. Thank you so much for joining us for Ideas Uncorked, our monthly happy hour and policy discussion series. For those of you who might be new to Hoover, it is a think tank headquartered at Stanford University in the heart of the Bay Area in Northern California. So this event brings our two worlds together, policy research and great wines. Hoover has approximately 200 scholars and is led by our director, former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, and we are dedicated to advancing the principles of freedom through wide-ranging policy scholarship. We are pleased to be joined today by Ben Ginsberg, who is the Volcker Distinguished Visiting Fellow at the Hoover Institution and a nationally known political law advocate representing participants in the political process. His clients have included political parties, political campaigns, candidates, members of Congress, and state legislatures, governors, corporations, trade associations, political action committees, vendors, donors, and individuals. So very short list. He's also represented 4 of the last 6 Republican presidential nominees. Joining Ben today is Bauer, who is a professor of practice and a distinguished scholar in residence at the New York University School of Law and co-director of NYU Law's Legislative and Regulatory Process Clinic. Bob served as White House counsel to President Obama from 2009 to 2011, and in 2013, President Obama named him to be co-chair of the Presidential Commission on Election Administration. In 2021, President Biden named him to be co-chair of the Presidential Commission on the Supreme Court of the United States. With that, I will let Bob and Ben take it from there.
Thank you, and thanks to all of you for coming today to Hoover. It is a wonderful place. I'm thrilled to be associated with, and the work that the scholars at the institution do to bring policy and politics together is really extraordinary, and I hope you get a chance to dive into their works and attend many of the programs here and in Palo Alto for that matter. It's a pleasure for us to be here. I want to start out with saying that I owe a deep debt of gratitude to Bob, because without the countless misplaced suits and complaints that he did, I never would have been able to have all those clients and have such a fun career. So thank you again for that.
And I'm happy to continue on that course.
we're both retired.
You have a retirement to think about.
We're both retired. It's all right. We got Columbia, Stanford. They'll both be in the Ivy League soon. It'll be fine. NYU. So we wanted to talk to you a bit about elections and public confidence in elections and how to restore it at a time when it is frankly undergoing some issues. According to polling that I'm sure all of you have seen, roughly a third of Americans don't have faith in the reliability of elections. And that is a tremendous problem, not only in terms of a basic institutional framework of the country, which is our elections, and for the peaceful transfer of power. That is sort of a bedrock principle for everything we do, but also for candidates that win elections to be able to have the mandate to govern. If there is not faith in the way an elected leader got there, that means governing is really, really tough. Now, most of the charges these days are coming from my side of the aisle, from the Republican Party. But I dare say if Donald Trump wins, the institution of elections will undergo a similar assault, I think, from Democrats. And so if Trump triumphs, what's sort of been let out of the bottle in these attempts, it's going to make it harder for him to govern as well. So the whole institution of elections is something that I think needs to be propped up. And Bob and I have sort of a long history, both fighting each other for a lot of years, but also agreeing on the importance of the institution of elections and how the competition between the parties is really what strengthens the country. But part of that is believing in elections. I don't know, you want to talk a little bit about our history together?
Yes, so Ben and I met, believe it or not, during a recount of an Idaho congressional campaign in 1982. And yeah, exactly, I was 15 at the time, and Ben was in his 40s. And we were on the other side of that aisle and then subsequent, campaigns that we were involved in, like the 1988 presidential campaign and so forth. But we have always thought that there is got to be some space outside of the space of partisan contestation for the two parties to come together and agree on, if you will, norms and rules and behaviors that ultimately preserve the electoral process as the place where we resolve questions about who should hold political power, or accept that the other side has won political power for defined periods of time under defined rules. And it wasn't mentioned in the intro, but I think it may have been mentioned in your case, I can't recall. But in 2012, Ben represented Governor Romney, and I represented President Obama in his re-election campaign. And if you recall, there was quite a lot of attention paid then to long lines at the polling place, hours of people waiting, and President Obama mentioned that in the speech that he delivered on election night, in which he acknowledged his victory, and said we have to do something about this. He then determined that he was going to put together a presidential commission on a purely bipartisan basis to look at how the electoral system worked and what would it explain this kind of dysfunction in the polling place. And the question was, what would it look like? And there were two decisions that were made that I think you would agree, the kind of decisions that need to be made in these circumstances by any political leadership or by the two political parties working together. One was that we were going to have a commission of people who knew what they were doing. It was not going to be a commission with lots of political signaling, former governors, former senators, but they would be either former, current, or current election officials, or people who had technical expertise that they could contribute to the issues that we were going to be addressing. And then the next question was who were going to be the co-chairs, and President Obama appointed Ben and me, adversaries only months before, to be the co-chairs, one Democrat and one Republican. And to Ben's great credit, because it was the immediate aftermath of what was obviously, as is always disappointing for the losing side, a disappointing loss for Governor Romney, Ben agreed to do it. And
It was therapy from PTSD. So
exactly. And President Obama announced the formation of the commission and that he was going to appoint these two councils to co-chair it in his State of the Union address in 2013. So we spent a year going around the country with the 10-member commission and talking to election officials. And the thing I want to just mention that Ben and I are involved with now, because I'll let Ben describe that as well, we have been aspiring ever since we produced that report and delivered it to a notion that election administration is a facet of public administration. It's technical work. It's designed to deliver a service to the voters, how machines are acquired, what tests are applied, how the polling place is organized. The whole mechanics of putting on an election is a complicated enterprise, not a political enterprise. Not everybody can do it, and nobody without experience can aspire to do it well. And so we came to really appreciate, particularly with the limited resources at their disposal, how well our election officials generally across the country were performing. And we wanted to recognize and support that work and give them even more resources so they could improve their performance. And that was the gist of the report we delivered to President Obama, and it was released to the public in 2013, 2014, a year after the commission was established. And it's in that spirit that Ben and I have continued to work together.
somebody's trying to get you, so I'll talk for a while.
I'm sorry, is this me?
I think it might have been.
Don't talk to Ben Ginsberg. I get a real-time fact check from the Democratic National.
Your people are everywhere. It's part of the problem. I mean, there were a couple of things about the commission to give you a flavor for the way we approach increasing confidence in elections. The first was, we took a Stanford law professor, Nate Persley, who is gracing us with his presence tonight. Nate was our research director and did a marvelous job of bringing the sort of practical politics that Bob and I had really practiced with the academics who have studied this and made an incredible contribution in terms ideas that really, I think, helped form our work. And then the makeup of the commissioners was, we were the only two involved in politics. The rest were experts. We had 5 state and local election officials who could bring light on that. And then 3 people from the private sector, including, and this was really the most brilliant decision of all, the director of theme parks at the Disney company, because after all, if you're gonna talk about long lines, nobody does it better than Disney. And that was amazingly helpful to us. Bob, we did a behind the scenes tour of Disney World to see how they do it. Bach and Dumbo's Flying Circus was just something I never could have dreamed of seeing in my entire life. But it taught us that the way Disney manages lines of 5-year-olds had some inspiration for the way voting should work. Because if you go into a polling place and it's crowded, they don't make 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds stand in line. There is a common area where people can take a number and a buzzer and sit and wait. Disney World, it's kids running all around in a playground, but in a polling place, you have a place for people to sit rather than stand in line until they do it. So there were those sort of practical applications that can help the voting experience get better and increase confidence. I should say that the guy from Disney was absolutely, abhorred the fact, could not understand why each polling place in America doesn't have a concession stand when you get done with voting. But whatever.
Yeah.
So fast forward a bit. You have noticed that the political rhetoric has gotten a little bit more heated. And the institution of elections has come under greater assault. And so we have sort of in our retirement projects, instead of feeding the pigeons on the park bench instead of the old lawyer's home, decided to go out and work in elections. And we have a couple of nonprofits that we co-chair that do that, and it's given us a lot of interactions with people working in elections as well. One is called the Election Officials Legal Defense Network, and it is essentially a pro bono resource for election officials in trouble. So we go out and recruit lawyers around the country who will provide pro bono services to election officials when they get in trouble and their own local attorneys are conflicted or not able to give them what they think we need. Our more I would say direct and robust project is one called Pillars of the Community, if you want to.
Sure. By the way, I should just disclaimer here. So we're both still affiliated with our respective political parties, and I continue to do work for the Democrats on voting rights issues and my views of election protection issues, however we want to characterize it. And my views is that's fine. Everybody understands that. When we go out to Pennsylvania, Arizona, Wisconsin, we're not hiding that. We're saying, but we're coming together for this particular purpose. You can make of our partisan commitments what you will, but there is that bipartisan space that we're trying to create. In Pillars, and this is something Election Official Legal Defense Network is kind of working quite automatically right now. Election official needs a lawyer, is matched with a lawyer. That's an attorney-client relationship that they establish with the lawyer that we supply, and they take it from there. And it's just, it runs really quite well. There's a communications team that's also available to these election officials who've never had to respond to the press in the public space the way they do now. And if they want communication support, they can receive that also. But in Pillars, what we are trying to do is to, in states that are among the most contentious jurisdictions, identify state and local community leaders who are then brought together with election officials for a very constructive dialogue about how the elections are prepared for, on the following theory: that those who run the local businesses or are the heads of local businesses associations or preach in the religious congregations or run the community colleges or run the veterans organizations, they're not partisans, they're not politicians, they don't run